Every couple of years we seem to debate whether or not cheese is good for you. Sometimes it's high in fat and should only be eaten in small quantities. Other times it's a good source of calcium or protein. Even the Romans were discussing whether or not cheese was healthy. But they were also using cheese to cure bruises, carbuncles, colds, and freckles. Hey there, cheese historians! I'm Julia and this is Cheese History, a channel all about the origins, history, and impact of cheese. This is the final in a series of episodes about Roman cheese. In previous episodes, I've looked at how the Romans made cheese, what Roman cheese was like, where it was made, and how the Romans used it in their cooking. Make sure you have watched all these episodes so that this one makes sense. In this episode, I will cover how cheese was used to treat a whole raft of illnesses and other ailments, as well as what the Romans thought about the health properties of cheese. So if you've enjoyed learning all this great information about the history of cheese, do make sure you're subscribed to this channel so you don't miss out on more cheese history. Hippocrates was a Greek physician in the 5th and 4th centuries BC, and is technically too early to be part of this video, as I'm supposed to be talking about the Romans. But what he has to say about the effects of cheese on the body is too good not to include. He's also very influential on the later Roman physician Galen, who I will talk about a bit later. Hippocrates briefly notes that cheese produces flatulence and constipation, and heats the other articles of food, and it gives rise to crudities and indigestion, but it is worst of all to eat it along with drink after a full meal. So Hippocrates would not have been a fan of the after-dinner cheese board paired with a glass of wine. In Greek and later Roman medicine, health was believed to be the result of balancing the 4 humours: blood, black bile, yellow bile, and phlegm. Food was an important way of keeping these humours balanced, because different foods produce different humours. If the humours got out of balance, a person would get sick. Hippocrates uses cheese and wine as examples when discussing his approach to medicine generally. It appears to me necessary to every physician to be skilled in nature, and strive to know, if he would wish to perform his duties, what man is in relation to the articles of food and drink, and to his other occupations, and what are the effects of each of them to every one. It is not enough to know simply that cheese is a bad article of food, as disagreeing with whoever eats of it to satiety, but what sort of disturbance it creates, and wherefore, and with what principle in man it disagrees. For there are many other articles of food and drink naturally bad, which affect man in a different manner. Thus, to illustrate my meaning by an example, undiluted wine drunk in large quantities renders a man feeble. And everybody seeing this knows that such is the power of wine, and the cause thereof, and we know moreover on what parts of a man's body it principally exerts its action. And I wish the same certainty to appear in other cases. For cheese, since we use it as an example, does not prove equally injurious to all men. For there are some who can take it to satiety without being hurt by it in the least. But, on the contrary, it is wonderful what strength it imparts to those it agrees with. But there are some who do not bear it well, their constitutions are different, and they differ in this respect, that what in their body is incompatible with cheese is roused and put in commotion by such a thing, and those in whose bodies such a humour happens to prevail in greater quantity and intensity are likely to suffer the more from it. Unlike wine, cheese has different effects on different people. So Hippocrates concludes it's not possible to use a universal approach for everyone in terms of medicine, as different foods affect people differently. Hippocrates doesn't seem to associate cheese with curing illness, but rather causing problems. Later era Roman writers don't appear to entirely agree with him on this, as their opinions on cheese become more complex. Claudius Galenus, or Galen, was a 2nd century AD Greek physician at the time of the Roman Empire. He was influenced by Hippocrates and also sees medicine as balancing the four humours. He also speaks of foods being hot, cold, moist, and dry. A balance between these four characteristics is also important for health. He writes about the different properties of cheese and how each can impact a person's health. Aged cheese can make a person thirsty and produces an unhealthy humour. It's a problem because it's not moist, having dried out while aging, and this produces more warmth when digested. This additional warmth makes a person eating aged cheese thirsty. Galen recommends avoiding aged cheese entirely because there are no benefits to him. Personally, I'm going to ignore his medical advice here because I really liked aged cheese, particularly aged cheddar, and there is no way I am giving that up, not for any ancient medical advice. Cheese that falls between fresh and aged cheese is not as bad as aged cheese, but it is still bad, according to Galen. I get the impression that he didn't like cheese very much. It is young cheese or fresh cheese that he regards as the best type, particularly that made in Pergamum. Called by the inhabitants sour milk cheese, being pleasant as food, harmless to the esophagus, and less difficult to concoct and to excrete than all other cheeses. Moreover, it is neither unwholesome nor very markedly productive of thick humour, a common charge against all cheeses. According to Galen, the sort of humour produced by cheese can also cause kidney stones whenever the kidneys are warmer than is needful. Taste is still important as it can help determine whether a cheese is healthy. The best of all is the one without any strong quality, with the sweetness that to a small extent surpasses the others. But the tastier cheese is also better than the distasteful one, and the one with moderate salt is better than a cheese with a lot of it or cheese with none at all. So, according to Galen, the healthiest cheese is a fresh cheese that is mildly flavoured and salted. We first looked at Marcus Terentius Varro in the first part of this series, as he mentioned the amounts of rennet being added to milk. He also comments on the different digestive qualities of different types of milk and cheese. He's chiefly concerned with two things: how easy cheese and milk are to digest, and how nourishing they are. Of all the liquids which we take for sustenance, milk is the most nourishing. First sheep's milk, and next goat's milk. Mare's milk, however, has the greatest purgative effect. Second, ass's milk, and then cow's milk, and lastly, goat's milk. But there are certain differences among these which arise from a difference of pasturage, a difference in the nature of the animal, and a difference in the milking. As affected by pasturage, milk is best for nourishment which comes from animals fed on barley and straw, and in general on solid dry food, while that from animals fed on green food is best for purging, and especially if the green food such as purges us when we eat it ourselves. As affected by the nature of the animal, milk from healthy animals and those not yet old is better than if it is the reverse. As affected by milk and birth, the best milk is that which has not been kept too long after milking, and which has not been milked immediately after parturition. Of the cheeses which are made from this milk, those made of cow's milk have the most nutriment, and when eaten are discharged with most difficulty. Next come those made from sheep's milk, while those made of goat's milk have the least nutriment and are most easily voided. There is also a difference depending on whether the cheeses are soft and fresh or dry and old, as the soft cheeses are more nutritious and less constipating, while the old dry cheeses are just the opposite. From what Varro writes, we can start to see how the Romans viewed their food in terms of both how good it was for them and how easy it was to digest. Varro lived several hundred years before Galen, but they both agree that soft, fresh cheese is the best health-wise, in part because they pass through the digestive system the quickest. When milk is turned into cheese, its properties change. Goat's milk is the least purgative, while goat's cheese is the opposite. I am really not sure how this episode has become a discussion of the laxative effects of milk and cheese. Varro commented that milk produced just after the birth of a young animal is not good. This is because the first milk produced by a lactating mother is colostrum, Colostrum contains high levels of antibodies to help the newborn's immune system. As its makeup is different to milk produced later in the season, it's not the best milk for cheese making, and can sometimes have trouble coagulating. Milk and cheese were not just foodstuffs that needed to be evaluated in terms of their health benefits or downsides. They could also be used as remedies and cures for a whole host of ailments. Like Galen and Varro, Pliny also considered salted cheese to be bad for the stomach, while fresh cheese had many uses. In Naturalis Historia, he writes, "Cheese is best for the stomach when not salted, or, in other words, when new cheese is used. Old, salted cheese has a binding effect upon the bowels, and reduces the flesh, but is more wholesome to the stomach than new salted cheese. Indeed, we may pronounce of ailments in general that salt meats reduce the system, while fresh food has a tendency to make flesh. Fresh cheese applied with honey effaces the marks of bruises. The cheese known as saprum is beaten up in wine with salt and dried sorb apples and taken in drink for the cure of celiac affections. Goat's milk cheese, pounded and applied to the part affected, is a cure for a carbuncle of the generative organs. Sour cheese, also, with oxymel, is productive of a similar effect. In the bath, it is used as a friction, alternately with oil, for the removal of spots." Despite not being considered the best food, cheese is used to remove bruises and spots and cure celiac disease and carbuncles. It should go without saying that Pliny's suggestions should not be taken by anyone watching this video as medical advice. Medical science has moved on since Pliny's day, and I don't think you're going to find very many doctors today who are going to prescribe cheese as a cure for bruises or celiac disease. Other remedies mentioned by Pliny include goat's milk and Temnium grapes and goat's cheese with oreganum as antidotes to poison, dried goat's milk cheese with oreganum and taken as a drink as a cure for animal bites, goat's milk cheese for persons who have taken mistletoe, and goat's milk for cantharides. Garlic can be boiled with milk or else beaten up and mixed with soft cheese as a cure for catarrhs. Catarrhs is a non-specific term for mucus building up in the nose, sinuses, and throat. So this is effectively a cure for some of the symptoms of a cold. Pliny doesn't say whether one is supposed to consume this garlicky concoction or to apply it somewhere. Even freckles can be removed with cheese. A he-goat's gall, mixed with cheese, live sulfur, and sponge reduced to ashes, effectively removes freckles, the composition being brought to the consistency of honey before being applied. It almost seems like there is very little that can't be cured with some mixture involving cheese. It's difficult to say how far into Roman society the medical opinions of Greek physicians like Hippocrates and Galen spread, even when they were supported by Roman authors like Varro and Pliny. As we saw in the other episodes in this series, the Romans were making many different types of aged cheeses that Hippocrates, Galen, Varro, and Pliny considered to have negative effects. As aged cheeses last longer and can travel further than soft, fresh cheeses, it seems to make sense that they represent a large portion of the cheese produced in different parts of the Roman Empire. I dare say that most of the residents of the empire got on with their lives without paying too much attention to the writings of a few members of the upper classes. That milk and cheese were used in a range of cures makes sense to me. As we're talking about a time long before the advances of medicine available today, using whatever food is available to try and cure people seems preferable to doing nothing. Having said that, I will not be using any of Pliny's suggestions. And with that, this series on cheese in the Roman Empire comes to an end. It's not the last time the Romans are going to appear on this channel though. The Roman Empire lasted for hundreds of years and had an undeniable impact on the history of cheese in Europe. To find out more about what that looked like, make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss the next episode of Cheese History. And I'll see you then.